Here we are with your Guru Market Part 4. Let's dive right in. So now you have a list of client qualities and understanding of their beliefs and behaviors before they're qualified to work with you, and some of the specific characteristics of your no-risk client. And remember, the no-risk client is this person that if you were to ask yourself the question, like, would I still take this person on if I was only guaranteed to be paid after I got them the result? What would your answer be? If you said, yes, I would still take them on, then that is your no risk client. Anybody else is either a low risk or a no way. So I'm hoping that you've got kind of that classification of clients laid out for you at the moment. So of course, we've still got a good bit of work to do in order to kind of get us toward our dream client. And this is kind of often the part that kind of starts that we, as much as the money section drives fear into people, this section here now where we're starting to kind of where the rubber meets the road and we're starting to really talk about who people are and who they're not going to be and all the rest of it often terrifies people and often creates a lot of stress and a lot of threat. So if you're one of those people, if you're kind of feeling that you're not sure exactly who the client is, don't worry, you will be having that level of clarity by the time you finish this module. There is absolutely no way that you're going to come out of this module without that information. Okay, so relax, chill out, have fun. So let's take this dream client matrix just a little bit further now and start to combine what you've already got into the 2 archetypes needed in order to help our dream prospects to climb the ladder and become our dream clients. Okay, so kind of these are the 2 archetypes we're going to be working on over the next 2 exercises. So archetype 1 is the dream prospect, archetype 2 is the dream client. Okay, and obviously they're going to share a lot of common ground, but just to be very, very clear, our dream prospects are not people who would actually meet the qualification for being our dream clients just yet. Remember, in that demonstration or in that kind of conversation around the ladder, I don't want to be coaching the Dalai Lama, for example. Okay, he wouldn't be my dream client. He's too far up the ladder, and so I also don't want to kind of be coaching with a person who is all gloom and doom and doesn't really believe in anything and is so jaded or cynical that they're not gonna be a good fit for me either. So my zone of my dream prospect and my dream clients are somewhere in the middle of the ladder, you could say. Okay, so just bear that in mind. So in the work that we're doing right now, working on the archetype of the dream prospect, it's really, really important to understand that these are not the people who are going to become our absolute dream client. Not just yet. I mean, sorry, let me say that again. They're the people who may become our dream client, but they're not just yet. Right? They're not our dream client just yet. So, just to be clear, this section is a combination of all of your previous dream client work as well as your work from previous modules. So if you've been getting inklings and insights about who your dream clients would be, absolutely include that in. You're not being asked to kind of treat this exercise or this mission in isolation from the other information. You now know a lot about yourself and the kind of person you are with your beliefs and so on and so forth. You know your message, you know your model, you know your money, you know your magic. Like, start thinking about this from a global 30,000 foot view perspective about the kind of people that you really see yourself initially conversing with and later serving. Okay, and bring all of that to bear on the work that we're doing here. So you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You can collate and collect the information you already have in order to create your archetypes. So part 1, just to be clear, in the last video I asked the question, who might meet these criteria? Okay, who might meet these criteria? So I gave the example that my own criteria would include people that could charge, not that they are charging, but they could charge $2,000 to $4,000 for their service. Now, arguably, we could say that about anything, but like, I'm talking about kind of based upon my knowledge and my experience of certain types of services or certain types of programs and products. So like, is $2,000 to $4,000 a reasonable amount for anybody to charge for, let's say, the examples I give as somebody with expertise and experience? Like, would it be possible for someone like that to do that? Somebody who has proven results from what they aim to teach and share others. Do I really believe that there are people out there who could do that? And I said that the people that met those criteria for me, most obviously, and look, there are so many different elements, I'm sure, but these are the people that came to mind for me: coaches, therapists, and personal trainers, because I've seen it, I've witnessed it, I've experienced it. I've seen time and time again people kind of upgrading their package prices into these realms and way, way, way beyond, right? So that's just an example of the people that would meet the criteria. So Ideally, you would have already created a list of different qualities and examples of people who would meet your criteria, right? So you've got your criteria laid out. I'm hoping as a result of the last exercise, you have kind of made a sample list of people that would meet your criteria. Although I realized in the last exercise, I didn't explicitly set that as a question. At the end of the exercise, I said to you, I gave the example of doing it, but then I said, here's what you do now. And I don't think I actually asked you to do that. So if you haven't done that yet, please go back and create a kind of a little list of people who would or could meet the criteria. Okay. If you don't have that list of people yet, do it. If you do, then just move on to part 2. And part 2 is this: create your dream prospect recipe. Okay, your dream prospect recipe. And I call it a recipe because it's kind of, if you're going to make a cake, what do? You go out and you gather together all the ingredients and then you mix them together. So you've got cake, flour, butter, eggs, milk, all that kind of stuff, and you bring it together. And in many respects, we're looking at this in the same light, right? So all the bits that you've already put together are a big part of your prospect recipes. Those qualities, those characteristics, those beliefs, right? All of those bits, they all come into it clearly, of course. But I just want to be clear here. Your dream prospect is someone who has met all the previous definitions and who also meets a certain and specific set of criteria related to their psychographics, right? So that's really what this section is about. It's about their psychographics. In other words, psychographics are about their inward-facing qualities, things that they kind of think and feel and believe and all this kind of stuff. So we already covered a lot of beliefs. So again, there is going to be some common ground with the previous exercises. That's not by accident. It's by design. Okay, this is taking what you've already done and bringing it on a notch. So if I were to share with you my dream prospect, okay, my dream prospect, being very, very clear once more, not my dream client, my dream prospect. Okay, they have a tendency to be an opportunity seeker versus a strategic thinker. Okay, that's my dream. That's the quality of my dream prospect. This has been their tendency. They have tended to be someone who values hustle and hard work. And in fact, they very often wear it as a badge of honor on their sleeve, and they kind of have supported and defended that. They've tended to see money spent as a risk and a cost rather than a true investment. Okay, that's been their tendencies. That the kind of they get intellectually. So here's where we come down to that intellectual versus functional, right? Intellectually, when you speak to them, they'll talk about kind of how it's really important to invest, and they'll often be trying to persuade their clients to invest in them, and yet kind of functionally, when the conversion of that is that the belief hasn't panned out. They've often not invested in themselves very much or at a very, very high level. Okay, I'm not saying that they haven't. So here, the key word here is tended, right? They've tended to be an opportunity seeker. They've tended to be someone who values hustle and hard work. They've tended to see money spent as risk and cost rather than investment. They tend to be an information junkie and believe that the next piece of information will be the one that brings the big breakthrough, right? So they're buying every book, all the ebooks, they're downloading all the reports. They're on probably 100 different people's lists. They're in about 20 or 30 different groups for my groups, there would be personal trainers and coaches, right? So kind of personal trainers, coaches, therapists, healers, they're probably in about 20, 30 groups, right? They claim to hate marketing. They're always saying, I hate marketing, never like marketing, no, don't enjoy it. And yet they spend an inordinate amount of time and money learning about marketing, right? Again, another really, really common thing. And basically most of the groups and tribes they join online and most of the lists that they sign up for are not about the skill of being a better coach, for example. They generally tend to be about how to sell your coaching, right? So it's that strange paradox that they say they hate marketing and yet they're spending all their time so-called learning about it. And I say so-called a bit tongue-in-cheek because mostly they haven't learned enough to actually get anything from it, but they spend a lot of time reading it and researching it. They tend to have a client-centric approach where all decisions are made for the good of the client, and that includes the way they build their packages, the way they put their pricing together, the number of times per week they see people, and so on and so forth. They tend to feel that client-centric approach is for the good of the client, yet they still attract clients that won't or can't pay for what's been created for them. Okay, so that's an interesting one because people bending over backwards to say, no, I'm client-centric, I'm all about the client, for me, it's not about money, it's about the client, right? And yet for all of that, they generally tend not to have clients who are willing to do the kind of work that they want to do, who are willing to pay the kind of fees that work for both them and the client, right? There are a lot of people whose clients won't even step up a really small amount in the income, or who threaten to leave if they put up a session fee by £10, dollars, euros, or yen, right? They tend to think of themselves as an entrepreneur or a business operator, but they do all the work of their business themselves, and they don't really make money if they're not present. So they're actually having more of an experience of a job, and not even a full-time job with benefits, but more like a kind of a part-time contractor. In other words, they only get paid for when they're present, right? And yet they are kind of constantly researching and thinking of themselves as an entrepreneur or business operator. I have a business. No, you don't. You have a job, right? They create a lot of products and services that don't sell too well, and so they return to the drawing board constantly to create new ones. Okay, so they build a program, the program doesn't sell, and instead of actually looking to how they've been selling it and everything else, they say, well, maybe it's not that program. Maybe I should go and put together this other thing. And so they're constantly, again, comes back to that opportunity seeker mode, right? Where they're constantly saying, well, actually, so maybe that's the wrong one, and January's coming up, so maybe I need to go and do my January Jumpstart program. And there's nothing wrong with taking opportunities if you have a strategically focused company. But if you have a an opportunity-based mindset and you don't have strategy, that just keeps you jumping around, creating new stuff that never sells, right? Keeps you constantly feeling like you're doing everything you can, and yet nothing happens. Okay, they tend to join free groups and download free resources, yet do little with what they learn and with what they download, because it doesn't feel relevant to their own business. They tend to have fallen out of love with their businesses, yet not the work that got them into the business in the first place. And you hear this very, very often with coaches and trainers and therapists and heart-centered healers, right? They basically hate having their business. They were so excited when they first started out. I don't love the business anymore, and yet I still love being a coach. I love being a therapist. I love working with people. I love changing lives, right? But again, this is another common quality. They tend to consider themselves committed and motivated, yet constantly change direction or fail to complete tasks. And very often they don't even kind of keep to their base commitments, okay? And yet they have a tendency in their mind to call themselves committed people, okay? They have a tendency to feel that they themselves are a motivated and often an inspiring person, an inspired person as well. And yet kind of often they are not motivated and inspired enough or committed enough to actually see through on their own tasks, or see through on the decisions they've made, even at the smallest thing. And again, this is why, kind of such a big deal of, kind of went into the idea of commitment when you join this program, right? So there's all these things, and they can all feel quite negative, and you can think, Dax, are you certain that you want these people? Like, these sound like a whole bunch of negative qualities. Like, why would you want to work with them? And here's what stops them from being too far down the ladder, right? So if you think about that ladder again, this next section is what stops them from being too far down the ladder for me, too far gone, so to speak, for me to be interested in them. They know what they've been doing hasn't been working. It's not they're denying it anymore. These are people that now know. So they may have had a tendency to do all these other things, but they now know that what they've been doing hasn't been working. They know that it's not likely to ever work. And they know that the answer isn't just another ninja hack or a magic bullet. And in fact, kind of as much as they've tended to be searching for those things, they don't want that anymore. This is what's already going on in their mind. They're already saying, look, it's got to be more to it than this. There's got to be another way. They know that they're going to have to create something more strategic. And they're already accepting this as an idea. And they know that they're going to have to get uncomfortable and to pay for help in order to get to the next step. These aren't people that are denying it anymore or thinking that the next free report is going to get them there. Okay, and there's a whole bunch more that they know too, and I'm trying to be very, very careful here to give you enough example of the direction I'm trying to take this, but without kind of seeding the ground too much so that you end up with using kind of all of my answers and all of my categories. But I'm hoping you're seeing where this is headed, right? So that you've got the first half here is their tendencies. They tend to be this and they tend to be that. And the reason I say their tendencies is because not everybody meets everything on that matrix, and not everyone is doing all of that all the time. And some people are still doing some of it, but some other parts they've stopped doing, right? But they would certainly, if I were writing content to those people, they would definitely recognize themselves in that. Likewise, if I started to write to people who said, look, and I was saying, look, let's be honest, this is not for you if you are still doggedly kind of saying that, what you're doing is working, or, you're ignoring the evidence, and it's not going to work for you if you're like absolutely committed to finding another ninja hack or another kind of magic funnel or something like that. Those people would also know that I'm speaking to them. Okay, so we've got the two halves of the conversation here. We've got their tendencies, and then we've got what we know about them, or more importantly, what they know about themselves and their situation. So I hope that makes sense. So I'm hoping you can see how this all starts to come together, right? I now know a lot about the people who I want to start the conversation with. And that's the key point here. This is the point where I want to start the conversation. These people are definitely not ready to become my dream clients yet. Okay, there's a lot of work that needs to be done to close the gap between them. And so now we could say, well, look, why not just speak directly to the dream clients? Well, once we get our dream client together, you can create plenty of content for the person who is already at dream client level. That's very, very easy to do. You can increase and escalate what I'll be describing to you later on as intimacy. You can increase and escalate intimacy with people, but it's far easier to, I think one of the big complaints about when we niche, for example, is that the markets often end up too small, right? And maybe for the absolute person who is already right now, this instant, our dream client, maybe it often feels that way. But what about for maybe the thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people who are out there who are part of our dream prospect matrix, who are recognizing themselves in all of those other things, and who, once they're brought into a conversation, can be guided along through that intimacy matrix to get to the point where they say, do you know what, I'm now ready to step up. And in all likelihood, that's exactly what happened to you and exactly why you're in the Guru Project yourself, right? Because I recognized many of those qualities in you. Not that I, sorry, let me say this again. It's not so much that I recognized them in you. I obviously I have some experience of seeing those things, and you could say I'm partly reverse engineering some of my experiences, and absolutely, right? But what I found is, of all the people that I could choose to have conversations with, I could choose to have conversations right now with only my dream clients. And what I found is it's actually harder work. It's more challenging work. It's much slower work than and it might seem paradoxical, but it's actually quicker to go back to people who are your dream prospect, who are still struggling with many of the things, who are still in the dark about many things, and are just in that transitional mode, because you can be involved in the intimacy and indoctrination. And when I say indoctrination, I don't mean in a form of brainwashing and kind of, doing the whole kind of prodding at their pain kind of thing. That's not what I mean at all. You can be involved in their indoctrination in the way they change their beliefs before they even become a client with you. And that's what this is about, okay? So they will be amazing prospects, even though they're not ready to be my dream clients. They will be absolutely amazing prospects. They're people that are already hanging on every word. They're not necessarily believing everything I'm saying just yet, but they are already open to it because of the tendencies that they've had in the past and the realities of those tendencies, like the experiences they've had and what they now know about themselves and about those experiences. So they all have the qualities I desire, the characteristics, the belief, and all the challenging worldviews, the beliefs, and the psychographics. You can see how that all comes together. So these are wonderful people to start conversing with because they already know what they're doing isn't working, they're seeking to change, and they know they're going to have to get outside their comfort zone. They don't know me yet. They don't know what I offer, let alone whether or not they desire it. But I'm joining them in a conversation based upon specific qualities, beliefs, characteristics that are inspiring to me. Now, that is perhaps the most important part of this. All of those characteristics are inspiring to me. It's not about inspiring them. For the next 18 to 36 months, we're having conversations about people who are in the dark around these areas, who have tended to be kind of looking for the magic bullet, who've tended to be opportunity seekers, who've tended to have all the other stuff that I've just listed going on. Would that inspire me to continue the conversations and keep having those same conversations for the next 18 to 36 months? Absolutely, hell yeah. These are conversations that I love having because I love being part of the transformation process. The way to look at this is we're looking to transform people before they become our clients. Before we even serve them with our paid products and our paid services, we're looking to create a transformation in them to bring them to the transformation. Right? And I know that sounds weird, but that's exactly what we're trying to do. Okay. In other words, they are already our clients without pay. Okay, all these people are clients without pay. And this is why you never ever have to worry about going through the world kind of feeling bad about your high ticket and everything else and saying, yeah, but does this mean that I'm greedy and selfish and all the rest of it? Hey, you will probably do a lot more, if you want to call it that, free work and serve people to amazing transformations than you will of your paid work. So you don't have to worry about leaving everybody behind and all that other stuff that might be going through your head. So just to be clear, here's what you're being asked to do. So create your dream prospect recipe of what they know about their current situation relative to their tendencies, right? So an example is, let's say their tendency has been to believe that they have to work hard and hustle and all the rest of it. And what do they now know? They now know that that no matter how hard they've worked, that it's never about how hard they're working. It's about how smart they work, right? Or whatever is true for you, whatever you're saying that you want them to know. That was just an example. But ideally, what we want is for every single one of their tendencies, we want to have this shift in that's what they tended to do and that's what they tended to believe, or maybe it's still what they tend, still a tendency there, but this is what they now know. Okay, they know that something has to change in this area. They know that hard work isn't going to be the key to getting them what they want. They know that being an opportunity seeker is not going to be the key to kind of building a successful business, right? They know that going for all the free stuff isn't ever going to be the way that builds them into kind of creating this kind of dream life that they really, really want. So hopefully that makes sense. So that's your mission. Okay, create the dream prospect recipe of what their tendencies are, create the dream prospect recipe of what they now know at the start of the prospect conversation, not the dream client conversation. Okay, they're your dream prospects. So that's it, get to it.